Okay, we are live. Hey, thanks everybody again for joining Blur Book Club. Got a special panel this month. We all know we just finished reading the book Between the World and Me. Powerful prose and narrative by Mr. Coates. So I got a round table of brothers, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting out with Charles Baker. If Charles Baker is online. All right, so we'll wait for Chuck to get back to us. But next up on the mic is my man Donald Curry. Donald, tell us about yourself, and thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm Don Curry, currently operating a food truck out in Chicago called the Southern Fig Food Truck. We specialize in soul food with items named after various Negro League players. We're ranked as the top 15 food truck, one of the top 15 food trucks in the city by timeout.com. And most recently, our sweet potato pie, our Birmingham Black Baron sweet potato pie, was ranked in the top 100 drinks and dishes in the city as well. So safe to say we're doing pretty well, and looking forward to this lively discussion on a great book.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Curry. Next up on the mic, we got Mr. Knox. Knox, introduce yourself.
Hello, how's everybody doing out there? My name is Stephen Knox, a graduate of Howard University, sports writer, working for any outlet that pays at this point, ESPN, Bleacher Report, SB Nation, don't matter. You got to check, it clears. I'm right here for you. But yeah, this is a great book. Looking forward to talking about it.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Knox. And I'm tweeting out a couple of his links. If you're an Atlanta Hawks fan, check out this story he did about the revitalization, for lack of a better word, of the Atlanta Hawks. And if you're an HBCU fan, especially a Howard fan, check out the story he just did on the up-and-coming soccer superstar that's playing for Howard Bisons, right? Is that it?
Yep, Howard University Bison.
University Bison. Okay, thank you. Next up on the mic is a close personal friend of mine, Mr. Terry Lee. Mr. Lee, thanks for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Can everybody hear me? I'm trying to do this on my phone.
Yeah, you sound good.
I sound good. Okay.
It's a quiet storm.
Quiet storm. Terry Lee. Right now I do leadership development and training for a broker dealer here locally, but I also do a lot of community work and motivational speaking for youth groups around the country, and I also do some blogging for leadership development and youth development as well. Known Freddie for quite a while, so appreciate being here.
For those that don't know, he just dropped my real name is Freddie, but I'm going by Thelonious Legend.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to blow the cover.
You let him look behind the curtain, bro. You let him look behind the curtain. All illusion is now gone. All right. So next up is a close personal friend of mine, his brother I met out when I was doing IT consulting work in the DC Maryland area. His name is Renaldo Summerset. Ray, tell us a little bit about yourself, and thanks for coming.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay, good. Yeah, Ray Summerset, like you said, out of the Washington, D.C. area, Maryland. I'm into software development. That's where I met your boy, Mr. Legend. and yeah, also Howard University grad. So, this book actually sparked some things up in me. So I'm looking forward to discussing it with these fellas today.
All right, thanks. And I wondered, did Charles make it back?
Yeah, I'm back now. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear earlier and had to go out and come back in.
All right. Hey, Charles, so we skipped you on the first go-around for introductions. You want to go ahead and give it a shot now? Tell the crowd about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I'm Charles Baker, loving husband and father. Currently, I work in telecommunications marketing. I manage a vertical market where we kind of outsource with other top Fortune 100 companies and go to market together with products and services. I'm very active here in Chicago on the political scene and also on the Activision scene. Graduated from Loyola New Orleans, but I claim Xavier, so I'm really going to enjoy this HBCU discussion because I probably might be the only PWI. who matriculated on this call, but I definitely have some insight. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and thank you for inviting me.
All right. So that's the crew, and everybody could follow along with the Blurred Book Club hashtag. You can tweet us your questions. Everybody knows today's book is Between the World and Me. And I'll say, and whether you liked it or not, it made you think, right? And that's what all books are supposed to do. So the first question that's up is all right, so question one. Mr. Coates had a lot of adoration and nostalgia for Mecca. That was obvious. What are your thoughts and feelings on, his feelings on Mecca and about HBCUs in general? And we'll start with Charles.
Okay. Well, of course, we're going to start with the guy who didn't go to a HBCU.
we went to HWCU.
Right. But let me kind of explain something. I went to school in a suburb of Chicago called Maywood. It's a very blue-collar community. In fact, it's probably lower blue-collar now. And it's sad, but we kind of had two tracks of students, academic and basically the ones vocational that the school didn't really care about. Now, of course, if you were in the academic class, being that our school was kind of half black, half white, you went to school with more of the Caucasian. If you were in the academic track, you went to classes with more of the Caucasian kids. I never knew about HBCUs in high school. They never taught us about them. Since I was smart, they were like, okay, you're going to U of I, which was the best state school here in Illinois, or you possibly might want to go to a Big Ten school neighboring. Now, I did get a scholarship, but I didn't find out about Howard to one of my classmates who, now mind you, this was a brother who, in my opinion, had no blackness whatsoever. Ended up going to Howard. After his freshman year, he was one of the coolest dudes ever. We went from enemies to friends. He's a Q now, and he's a doctor, one of the greatest people I've ever known. But he had no sense of blackness in high school. HBCU gave that to him. So yeah, do I think HBCUs are great? I think they're wonderful. I think they're something that is needed in our community. However, I also people need to understand that you got to be prepared to go to college, and sometimes with HBCUs, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the facilities, they might not have the top flight professors that some of the white schools have, and a lot of times they're going to look at us and our degrees and they're going to say, okay, well, you went to an HBCU, it doesn't measure up. It's not true, but we got to understand that there's two sides of the game. HBCUs, we got to support them and be with them, but we also got to make our mark at the PWIs, because if we don't, we're going to be stuck with only the HBCUs.
Okay, we'll segue into Donald Curry's thoughts on HBCUs and his experience with them.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a graduate of Virginia State University, so proud to say I came out of an HBCU. I mean, I look at it from the perspective with, the events that took place at the University of Missouri that, I mean, we were actually in our own mecca, if you will, because we were able to attend classes and, basically socialize ourselves with our peers in the truest sense. People that were just as goal-oriented as the next man or the next woman. But yet, we did have some that fell by the wayside that were not academically prepared or even socially prepared to, finish the journey that we started. But, from my perspective, I plan on sending all three of my kids to HBCUs because, I mean, at least at that point, I have nothing to worry about in reference to them. One, getting a quality education. The days of the HBCUs that were not adequately prepared as far as facilities or even infrastructure are long gone. I mean, we have, you take Howard, you take Morehouse, you take Spelman, you take North Carolina Central, graduating a massive amount of lawyers from their law school down there. So we're up and running. We're actually competing with a lot of the historically white universities when it comes to academia right now. And I can say that it didn't hinder me from my career in corporate. I mean, I went on to do quite well at a firm called Nuveen Investments, and I was working with people that came out of University of Illinois, Yale, and the like, and I was competing with them most definitely. So I'm all for it, most definitely. Firm believer in it, and I don't think I would be the the conscious man that I am today without having attended an HBCU.
Mr. Knox?
Okay. I always want to make it a point. I don't want to trash where anybody went to school. Anywhere you go to school, and with the Missouri thing, you deserve to be treated as a person who's there to have their mind molded and to learn. What I will say is, if you go to an HBCU, a Howard, a North Carolina A&T, a Virginia State, that's a problem you won't have to deal with. There's no one not taking you seriously or asking why you're there or how you got there, because everyone values you as a person off rip. And that kind of comfort that you really, that's why he calls it Mecca. I call it paradise on earth, because it's a place like you get to walk around without that weight of being black for 4 years every day. You get to just be you, and it's amazing. I saw Donald smiling because he knows what I mean. I mean, it's so. Coates, he described it perfectly. It was just so many different black people into so many different things, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful place. You don't even notice it as much when you're there because you're trying to do typical college stuff, you know. But but when you get older and you reflect on it and what it put inside of us, man, just the fact that black people do everything. We're into everything, and we're not a monolithic people, and you will never see that in its purest form as you will at an HBCU.
And I think your article about the soccer superstar and how it kind of crystallizes that we're not a monolithic group. So.
Yeah, she even said she's 19, 20 years old. She doesn't know what she wants to do with her life totally yet. But what she does know is she had to get out of where she was, and she is so much happier where she is now.
All right. Mr. Lee.
Well, given that my experience is limited with the HBCU, but having friends that have attended, and also just some of the comments here, I do notice one thing that I kind of still search for, that those that have attended have experienced, is that I guess that Mecca experience. Because I mean, being 46 years old, I still at times look for that in corporate America. Because in my corporate life, I still go to work, and generally I'm the only black person there, a lot of times the only male, and I'm looking around and I'm like, who can I talk to about what I watch, what I do, my culture? And I'm always looking for that assimilation, so I do miss that. I probably miss that not attending an HBCU. But on the flip side, I will say living in Omaha, Nebraska, not attending has also allowed me the ability to work in the culture that exists here, where I do see some of our brothers and sisters here struggle with that because they resist the culture, and then they tend to be less successful because they don't understand how that culture has worked.
The rules of the game.
The rules of the game, yeah.
All right. Mr. Summerset.
Yeah, these are all good thoughts. Everybody so eloquently put out there. I feel I share some of the same. I think this was a question that I was particularly interested in, and you, my man, Mr. Legend. I'm almost messed up again. Mr. Legend. He has some background in partially some of the stereotypical things that you experience when you say you went to an HBCU. But just so I'm not too long-winded. Particularly with me, the high school I went to was it was pretty much 70-30 white black. You didn't feel like you were 70% white, 30% black. Because I'm from a predominantly black neighborhood, I never felt like I was, kind of like I didn't feel like an outsider at high school. But what I did feel is that I was special because I was taking classes, and I wasn't taking classes with a lot of my peers. I was taking classes with, and I think one of the other gentlemen also said that on there, is that I was taking classes with more of the white kids and all of that. And going to Howard actually showed me quickly that I wasn't special at all. I was middle of the road at best. I had to work hard to be special there. And Also, I have to echo the sentiment that I knew people who went to UVA was another school that I was going to go to. I didn't even really know that UVA was that good of a school. That was how green I was back then. But that was another school I was looking at. And I know a lot of people who went there, and one young lady was telling me when I was in college they had a Black Solidarity Day. I was like, what the heck is Black Solidarity Day? And it was like all these all the black students get together to. I said, oh, we do that every day. As soon as I walk out of the yard, it's Black Solidarity. I don't even know what you mean, you know. And that feeling, which I do, I kind of understand the thought that preparing yourself for the real world, or you know, you may not necessarily get that, but that feeling that some of these other gentlemen here have said of being comfortable with yourself prepared me for the real world. Well, I had no problems assimilating to. When I got an internship, I was so proud of who I was. You couldn't take that away from me. You just couldn't take that away from me, no matter what. And that's my take on going to an HBCU. It may not be for everybody. Everybody may not need it. I definitely did. I can tell you that. I really needed that for my pride, my black pride. You know.
All right, thanks, Mr. Summerset. And my experience with HBCUs are I guess, are tertiary because I went to the same school as Terry Lee. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. But I can tell you a real example of the biases against HBCUs. Me and Mr. Summerset worked in the same office, and we had a brother that went to Ivy League school. And Ray and this other brother, who I'm not going to say because he might be listening, they would argue every day about the value of an Ivy League education versus the value of an HBCU education. And I went to a state school, so I'm just sitting there, you know, I'm instigating. I'd be like, ooh, he says your mama, you know, for the most part. And so Ray pretty much shut the conversation down, and he never talked about it again. One day when he was like, you talking all that mess, and we got the same job.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly. Yep.
And I think we started talking about sports after that. So the quality of the the quality of the education or the lack of resources, to me is secondary if it's even valid, because the brothers that I see come from HBCU that do so well, and me and Taylor have a close friend that became another person when he went to HBCU. So I didn't go, but I'm pro HBCU if there is such a thing. So thanks everybody for chiming in on that. Let's keep it moving. Next question. Mr. Coates described how encouraged and frightened he was by his son's openness. How do you manage inhibition raising black kids? Again, we're going to start with Mr. Baker.
Ooh, I'm starting to hate going first. Wait a minute, I'm about to change my last name to Charles Zeus or something.
All right, we'll go reverse order for the next one. We'll go reverse order.
Okay, but this one is kind of dear to my heart, though. As a father of a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, both girls, I'm dealing with that now, and it's even more compounded because we're in an area where we are acute minority. So I'm also struggling with making sure that my kids are doing well academically, but I also have to make sure they're doing well socially and emotionally too. And they're living in a world that's honestly quite different from mine. I didn't grow up in affluence. I grew up in probably a lower income black neighborhood, and everybody in our neighborhood looked like me. You know, most of the people had the same type of jobs as my parents. Nobody had a whole lot, but I understand that culture because it was only us. My children live in a totally different world, and it's tough to make sure that they're socially conscious and conscious about their race, but also make sure that they, need to understand you got to be accountable, you got to be responsible, you have to keep up with your peers, and it's difficult. So I'm struggling with my oldest now because it's a little funny. Sometimes I feel that, they listen to other propaganda instead of listening to what's taught at home. Case in point, with all the racial unrest, things that are going on in the world today, I have to talk to my kids constantly about it because unfortunately a lot of times when they listen to their friends and their friends' families, we have a totally different outlook. So while I'm encouraging my kids that, hey, you need to be outspoken, you need to understand, the biggest thing I'm working on them now is critical thinking. They have to be able to understand what they're listening and take all of the information to put it together to come up with an opinion. Don't let somebody give it to you. Use your life experiences, and I guess that's it.
All right, Mr. Curry.
Yeah. I look at it from the perspective that I have a 16-year-old son who's doing quite well. He actually is down in St. Petersburg, Florida, at St. Petersburg High. So he's actually graduating a year early as a junior this year, and
Nice.
wants to come up to
All
Chicago
right.
and yeah, thanks a lot, brothers, and major in computer programming at IIT. So last summer I got him into a program there, programming program, if you will, and it was 21 students, and out of the 21 it was himself and another young brother of Nigerian descent. Everyone else was either of Asian descent or Indian descent. So, I'd ask him how the class was going and whatnot, and he says it's going well, very well. He enjoyed it. He was learning a lot. And one particular day, he got in the car and he was kind of feeling some way, I sensed. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, we had a contest on this program called Python, and they basically wanted to see who could write the most code." So I said, "Well, who won?" He said, "Well, I got second place." I said, "Well, who beat you?" He said, "A white girl that was a junior at IIT beat me." And I said, "Well, hold on, what do you mean?" How did she win? What was she even doing in the contest? And he said, "Well, we couldn't figure that out, but she pretty much beat me."
Dang.
Yeah.
What?
So I'm thinking, and I'm like, "Well, okay, so you know what happened, right?" And he was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, they didn't want the other students that were in the class to feel less than by you winning." So he gets to scratching his head, and he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, remember, I've told you before, don't ever forget that, who you are, what you are, that you're always going to be held to different standards, no matter how smart you are, and, how aggressive you are in your life's goals. And if there's not a situation that has occurred at this point to point that out to you, this should." So, probably about a week before he left, he came back to me and said that, it was as if his eyes had been opened to another world. Because, I mean, again, these kids live in a bubble now. I mean, they're all, social media, video games, their peers. They have a much more diverse group of peers than we had growing up in the whole nine. And, sometimes you tend to lose yourself in the sauce, as I put it to them, to where you really forget that. And I even put it to him this way. I don't even equate it to being racism. It's a competitive thing. It's competition. Because if you think about it, and Stephen can relate to this. Why do you think it is when you look at college sports games that you see and they pan around in the losing team, you see the actual students crying, like literally crying, as if they left everything out there on that field? That's life. And that's the way that it's set up amongst all of us to some extent, that we're competing against one another. So it's not they're rooting for their team and we should be rooting for our teams. You know what I mean? And I look at it from that perspective.
All right. Mr. Lee?
Well, I have a 19-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter. And speaking with my son first, it's you talk about inhibitions, and how he was raised versus now some of the choices that he's making. The choices are coming from another message that that we didn't, that I don't think we communicated. So it's I think somebody mentioned living in a bubble. So I think the challenge, especially for African American youth in the city of Omaha, there's a lot of spikes of violence. It's a small pocket, and your circle of friends is quite limited. You can have a friend that's in college, and you can have a friend that's gangbanging on a regular basis. So it's always a check-in of what's going on in the head. So it's right now for me, it's a battle for him, for my daughter. Somebody else mentioned about critical thinking. She's already implementing critical thinking. It kind of gets her in trouble at times in school because one of her teachers calls her a civil rights activist because she challenges everything everybody says. And she's not always right, but I applaud her for challenging it, and and not accepting it is as it is. So I see between my female and male, there's a great separation on how they view the world and what the world is presenting them. So it's for me, it's I'm just I'm in a weird situation right now because my younger is more mature than my older, but I think it has a lot to do with what the city is presenting them and what they choose to take in.
Mr. Knox?
Well, I'm obviously more curious to hear what everyone else said because I don't have any kids, but I just thought in the book it was so interesting when he took his child, when they were touring daycares in New York City, and how he just openly went and just started playing with kids and didn't really care about what they looked like or where he was. And his dad, Mr. Coates, he was a little wary because of how he grew up and where he came from. He was like, I don't know about this, but then he was like, man, I envy that. I wish that could have been me growing up. So on one hand, you want your kids to be that gung-ho, but at the same time, you don't want them to think that they can do everything every other kid can because, as I was told, like everyone else, you can't. It's just kind of the raw deal that you're dealt. So I don't know. I don't know how to quite balance that yet because I don't have any kids, and that's one thing I wouldn't say worry, but it's something I ponder.
Summerset?
Yeah, I would say I'm in the same boat as Mr. Knox there. I don't have any kids, so I'm coming from a different perspective. But it is very curious to listen to you other guys here, just to see the difficulty I would say in balancing that. You want that openness, you want you want the inclusion, the openness, but you don't want them to be smacked in the face later on in life, like, nah. And it could be from, one side or the other, black people telling them, no, you can't do this, white people saying, no, you can't do that. I also take this from, I got, niece and nephew. I take another perspective. My nephew is 22, so he's not quite young, but with all these things going on, he sent a text saying, why do they hate us so much? It's like, wow, you know what I mean? And I thought that was very interesting. Because I figured by now he knew, he's old enough to understand, hey, this how things are. But I still think it's still just dawning on him that, hey, it's just so much hate out there. It's so much, there's such a divide that it's hard to balance it. It's hard to weed your way and find your place as a young person in this country. So that's my take.
As a parent, and that's this is a great question. As a parent, I have to say I don't know what the rules are. I grew up in the city where you knew what the rules were. You knew who were your enemies and where you could go and this and that. As a dad raising kids in the suburbs, I'm learning day by day. I mean, I love that my daughters have a diverse group of friends. I love that they're achieving academically, musically, athletically. But as far as advice, I know they're going to encounter some trials and tribulations related to their race that they're not thinking about right now. And it's going to be different than how I encountered it because my parents steeled me against it, right? And I'm trying to let them flourish and tell them this world is theirs for a taking, but at the same time be realistic. So how do you inhibit that? I hope you don't. I hope that you give your kids the tool sets, that they can defend themselves, verbally and with confidence when those situations arise, because they will arise. You can't protect them. You can't put them in bubble wrap. And as a parent, raising kids in an environment that I'm still not that comfortable with, I just take it day by day and play it by ear.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, Prince Jones was the inspiration for the book. He had a tragedy somewhat similar to Sandra Bland. And for those listeners that don't know, Sandra Bland's surname is someone that half the panel knows from church, knows her family. And so whenever we see a tragedy like this, I think it resonates with all of us because all of us from the urban community know somebody like that, or that could have been, you type scenario or situation. So we're going reverse order this time. We're going to start with Mr. Summerset.
And the question is, what does that do to the community?
What does that do to the community when a somebody that's up and coming, rising, like Prince Jones was, like Sandra Bland was, body is taken away tragically, with no excuse. There's been no retribution, no closure. It's just open ended. What does that do to a community, the family, and the ripple effect to the people that know that person?
Yeah, from my standpoint, I think there are multiple things that happen when these situations come about, and I think we're living them some of these things right now. The outrage, the community call to action, so to speak, and then I think good or bad, you get a sense of a pulse of this nation, and speaking specifically of this nation, of where people are when certain tragedies like this come out. As far as the black community and everything, it kind of shows that these are rallying points, and hey, you know what, things are. We have a black president, but we still need to be mindful of what's going on.
Well, racism ended when we had a black president.
Exactly. My bad.
We live in a post-racial America.
Everything is post-racial.
Right.
And it's a reminder that and as Mr. Coates put in his book, your body can be taken from you, and you feel helpless. And I think the helplessness is the thing that kind of is what gets me, is when you feel, it's just like, what could you do? What could be, and everybody has their answer on what could have been done differently. And my personal take on a lot of these tragedies are, we look at the victim a lot and what could they have done differently, but we also just have to look, be honest. Everybody needs to be honest and look, what could those within power have done differently? And what do we need to demand from them? And I think those are the questions that I would like to see answered. How are we going to get some real change and, to avert some of these tragedies? That's, kind of my take there.
Mr. Lee.
Well, to me, I think when it happens to Sandra Bland or Prince Jones, I think it illuminates the fragileness of this could happen to anybody. I think sometimes we'll see tragedy happen to some people, but we don't relate. But when it happens to somebody where there's that heightened, that shouldn't have happened to them, but it did, and then I think it's a reminder that every day, I have it at, I hate when people use the term at risk youth. In my mind, we're all at risk. As soon as you walk out the door, you at risk of something. So I think it just heightens that awareness of we're all at risk, and especially when it happens to those those types of people who in most situations don't put themselves in those types of situations where that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what we're seeing is every black man, every black woman is at risk, whether you're in the city or the suburbs.
Right.
Mr. Knox. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead. You can move on.
For me, it was. Man, I still don't even quite know how to describe it.
Because you were close to Sandra.
I don't want to put that much on it. I knew Sandra. I grew up with her. We came to the church in '99, 2000. I know Sharon, for example, was really, really nice to me when I first moved there, and I didn't have that many friends in YPD or the choir or anything. So, but I did know Sandra. Sandra was always a lot of fun. every time I saw Sandra, whether it was in church or outside of church, there was always some fun to be had. But I hadn't seen her in a while, and so I don't know. The news, it was. I got a couple text messages from people still around the area, and I would say, I don't know, I'm getting all these, my parents are telling me that you got to park a mile away to get into the church all of a sudden. All of a sudden, the lots are usually cool, but you got to go down in the neighborhoods and walk a ways to get to church. And you got all these cameras, you got all these activists, you got all these people standing in front of the church, and it's just like, somebody that you used to sit next to all the time, she's become kind of a symbol now. She was a person. She was, somebody I was cool with, and now she's just like a symbol of this issue that we've been dealing with in this country for. Whoa, everybody good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so just a symbol of things that have been going on in this country, for many years, and I'm sitting there, I'm at work, and I'm watching her on CNN, and I'm trying to do my job, and I see Sandra's face on CNN. I see Sharon and her mom talking, and, it strikes you as just like, man, this is a person now, Like, they were all people. Everyone's a person, but you can't quite, it's different when you realize, like, that just happened to somebody whose sister I'm probably going to see, whose mom I'm probably going to see when I come home in a few days. And I haven't seen them since, and I still don't even know what I would say, because how do you even, it's just a tragedy, and I know all the academic things that go along with it, all the oppression, all the police viewing people like black criminality. You see a black person, they're automatically up to something, and that's of course what went into it. But even if you put all that together, it's still different when you know them and you knew who they were and what they were about, and it's such a loss. Yeah.
Mr. Lee.
Say what now?
Oh, did you already speak on this, Terry?
Yeah, I already went.
All right, Mr. Curry.
Yeah. Well, I look at it from the perspective that even with the video coming out for Laquan McDonald in Chicago as well, to where may not have been of the same socioeconomic background as Sandra Bland or Brother Prince, but again, it was a situation in which his life didn't matter, and for that to happen to that brother, and again, who knows the backstory in reference to what was said, or I mean, I've even heard that the brother was in the back of the police car and they told him to get out and run. You know what I mean? Yeah, to that extreme. So it's just kind of like, you look at how this country was founded. I mean, it was a business. It was an enterprise. It was founded on free labor, right? So here we are now faced with issues to where the politicians are openly spewing hatred and not caring for other human lives. You look at it from the perspective that even with Ferguson, Missouri, how do you have a population that's 98% black, but yet everyone in elected offices was white?
That's
right?
the business model.
Yeah, no question, no question, and it also goes back to no one voted, right? One of the books that changed opened my eyes and lifted the veil lifted the veil from my eyes was The Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois, right?
Right.
My man says in that book, and he started writing it in 1880. It was published in 1903. So literally, we were going to give 40 acres and a mule once slavery was over with, but then the southern landowners were like, oh, hell no, we're coming back for our land. You're not going to do that. So the government in turn said, hey, what else can we do to right this wrong? So we'll give them the right to vote. So if they vote, they'll be able to basically vote for people that have their best interest at hand. It was set up that way, right, as soon as slavery was over with. But what W.E.B. Du Bois said that they did was that they added corruption to politics because they knew in turn that we would not vote at that point. We're still suffering from that today. So fast forward to where we are now and all of the issues that are taking place in our community. To me, you really have to look at what the Tea Party did. Going back to what you said earlier, Thelonious, it's a business model. The Tea Party basically set up a political action committee and pretty much bum rushed Congress and the Senate, took over, right? There's nothing that even significantly represents that for us. Straight up, there's no political action committee that actually gets out there and backs candidates that have our best interest at hand. So from a community perspective, from a local perspective, I really believe that, you know, the activists and the like are doing their part by constantly beating the drum of this is wrong and we need to make change. But the change is only going to come from an economic perspective. We really have to start pooling our resources to change that, to get, you know, sheriffs in office, police officers, and local politicians in office that really understand what it's like to, you know, be a person of color in the United States and have to deal with what these kids. Our kids are openly growing up seeing this stuff. You know, they can go to YouTube and pull up the Laquan McDonald shooting or any of this stuff and actually see it.
Yeah.
You know.
Mr. Baker?
Oh man, well, this is a tough subject for me since I knew Sandra and I know her family pretty well, so I really try to be careful with what I say. Basically, you know, her passing just it destroyed me. Not long before it happened, we had just celebrated Black History Month at DuPage, our church, where she was a member, and we had a social justice panel, and she was an active participant. We had a tour of the Black history of Chicago, and one of the most amazing things I remember about her, the entire tour, and how Blacks were treated during the Great Migration and so many different points of Chicago history. She was there taking notes. She had a notebook full of notes. And before she moved to Texas, the reason why she chose that because she said she understood her destiny was to go out there to try to help Black people be treated better. Wow. So it's very devastating to talk about this, but one thing I can say, even though I was always involved and we always knew about police misconduct and how we were treated differently, her death galvanized the movement. Her death was actually a huge point in the change in the way we have that conversation now. Because at one point, all Black people were the other. We did everything wrong. We deserved it. If we just behaved, nothing would have happened to us. And, you know, through Sandra and being the people that she's touched, we made it clear that, no, that's not true. No, this is actually one of our church's light. This is actually a young lady who has a future. And no matter how you try to portray her, those that know her can set the record straight because we knew her and she had a lifetime, even though it was short, of accomplishment that she could stand on. So, yeah, I guess I'm saying is, you know, I appreciate how the movement has changed, but I do miss her. I really love how her family has stood up through this crucible. I mean, if you want to see dignity, just look at the Bland family. Her sister, her mom, her sister Shantae, her sister Sharon, that whole family, the way that they've handled this tragedy and carried this on and inspired others inspires me. So I'm hoping that we use this tragedy. I'm hoping that we use the Laquan McDonald tragedy, and I'm hoping that we use them all to kind of realize that there isn't one way to win this game. We got to use our economic power. We got to use our political power. But most importantly, we got to hold those accountable. When we were given the right to vote, once slavery was established, people don't realize we actually had Black representation in government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we did not go to the polls. What happened was those rich white landowners, they got guns and told you better not go to the polls or you ain't going to have a life when you get out that poll. That's why we stopped voting.
And well, they also said you could vote if your grandfather could vote.
Yeah.
Well, you know, of course, the poll tax and the ways to dissuade you to vote somewhat legally, even though we know that's not true. But I mean, when you talk about physical violence, that probably would actually work on me back then. It wouldn't work on me today, but back then it probably would. Yeah. Now there's no excuse, though. I mean, the city of Chicago, we just had an election, and now people are saying, you know, we just had an election, and even though I got to admit the candidates weren't great, we didn't hold anybody accountable. We let our politicians roll out a bunch of pastors that tell us who we should vote for instead of actually going through the record and saying, what have you done for the community?
Yeah, and that's it. That's it. I voted for Chewy. I'm proud to say I knew back then. I knew back then. I mean, I knew back then. I'm like, I'm running with this cat. Seriously.
So what I'm gonna say about the Sandra Bland thing, the Laquan thing, and all the other people that have been essentially shut down, is there's always qualifiers. There's always they should have been doing this, should have been doing that, And after a while, you're just realizing that there's no excuse or no reason for shooting somebody in the back.
Exactly.
And so the people that was like, if you just, it used to be protect and serve, and now it's comply or die.
Damn.
So
I like that.
so my thoughts are on this are economically, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull the economics resources that we need to, but we need to be more cognizant of what's going on around us, and like Charles alluded to, and Mr. Curry alluded to, is know who you're voting for. Don't tell somebody tell you how to vote.
Yeah.
And and it's such cliche to say, but voting makes a difference.
Huge.
Because if more people would have went to the polls a while ago, we wouldn't have had the invasion of Iraq, where a lot of our brothers and sisters have lost their lives senselessly, right? So, voting matters. Voting makes a difference, and it's probably the least amount of effort you can do to make the biggest impact on your life. Because I know a lot of cats that came back from overseas, and they're not right. A lot of my family members that are in the military.
Wow.
And so we vote for these wars, but we don't vote for the benefits on the back end. And so I don't know, man. I'm just totally messed up about it, because again, you look at the arc of your life as far as where you start and where you should be. Sandra Bland was arcing up. She was up. You know what I'm saying? She was on her way to do some amazing things, and she was essentially shot down, and we still don't know why. And so, I'm with Charles on this one. I'm with Mr. Knox on this one. This one hit kind of close home to me, because I know her. I know her family. I used to talk to her. We joke around in church with her. My daughter sat next to her in church. She would make them laugh. And so this one's kind of personal. This one hit kind of close home to me. And what's most frustrating about it, I don't have an answer. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell the next person this is going to happen to. And so it kind of goes back to one of our first questions about how do you raise your kids without inhibition. I don't know. I'm learning on the fly here, but it's something we all have to be cognizant of. Oh, wow, that was a spiel. Okay.
Good one, though. Really good one, though. Really good one. Really good one.
Thank you all for that one. Thank you.
All right. So we on the question 5, right? Or are we on question 4?
4.
Yeah, we're on 4. Okay. So, and I'm gonna start with Mr. Knox on this one. We're gonna start in the middle.
Yep.
Question is what are your thoughts on Mr. Coates' dreamers construct, and does it relate in any way to American exceptionalism?
American exceptionalism, yeah. It relates to the idea that America, like he says, is the shining city on the hill, or like everyone says, like, this is what everyone aspires to be. We know the right way to live. We know everyone has to model themselves after us. And it's not true. Like, if your dream is to own a white picket fence with 1.5 kids and a dog or something like that, I mean, that's cool if if your family was allowed to participate in the GI Bill or the Federal Housing Authority, low interest loans that they offered back in the 30s and 40s, but we weren't privy to that. When they built a white middle class, we weren't allowed to be part of it. And it's not our great-great-great-grandparents that happened to. That's our grandparents. Some of you guys grew up in that. You grew up in neighborhoods as a direct result of that. And so you look out where I'm sitting probably 10 blocks away from Vine City in Atlanta, and you look at what happened there. It was by design. And you were designed to not have access to said dream, the dream of apple pie and Facebook and football cards. It wasn't for you. And so to call yourself the land of the free, and then to all of a sudden come back and say, well, but these people, we're just not going to give them any access to said dream. But then say if you work hard and you strive hard and you go to school and you don't get in trouble, that somehow, you can wrap yourself in that same blanket when I mean, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't add up, and people keep shoving that same stuff, you know, this for years, and you go to school and your teachers tell you that same stuff when you're growing up without, you know, any without looking at all like that didn't happen. Like it doesn't work that way for you all. You guys have to go. Black people have to go through so much just to be even. And like he was talking about, there's always a place for the exceptional, the black person. If you're great, if you can play basketball, if you're brilliant and become president, yeah. But you know, what if I just want a house in a quiet neighborhood and a place for my kids to go play basketball where it's safe? Why is it so hard for me to do that? Well, when my grandparents, all they did was work, and all my parents did was work. So yeah, that's where I'm with that.
All right, Mr. Lee.
Well, can you hear me? I switched to my computer, so I don't know if you guys can still hear me.
You might have to turn up your volume a little.
Is that better?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. So, this one I juggled around with in my head a lot because the whole concept of the dream construct is it's unconscious for anybody. Because if you're dreaming, you're in a sleep state. But I think the importance of the difference between the whole American dream, like you said before, that wasn't meant for us, or that was the goal that wasn't meant for us. So the whole idea, even today, is to squash that dream. And I think so many of us have accepted that there is no dream for us, and I think that's why we have high crime. We got a lot of things that are going on in our communities that shouldn't be going on because they've given up hope. But on the other hand, we have people who rise above that and still shoot for that American dream, even though they've kind of concocted some medicine for us to be in a deeper unconscious state. We got to work harder to get out of that conscious state. So I'm still trying to struggle with that, but I think we, even as black people, we still have to believe in that dream. So when he kept talking about the dreamers and the people that think they're white in the book, I'm like, well, who is he talking about? White people? Is he talking about black people who are still living for the dream? Because I'm here. The dream is here for me, and I think all of you gentlemen on this screen right now are working towards that dream as well. We probably have to work harder at doing it, but it's still there for us, even though the obstacles are there. So as I kept reading the book, I kept struggling with what he was saying, and even I was like, is he even still living for the dream? Obviously he is, because he's writing a book, he's putting out a message, he's talking about it, he's even experienced some things that he didn't think he would experience by traveling abroad and then coming back and having a different perspective. So I think the dream is there. I think, and when it comes to the American dream, that's not meant for us, but we still have a dream that we have to strive for. And I think a lot of us have given up on that.
Well said. Well said. Mr. Baker.
This is a tough one for me because, see, I'm kind of disillusioned with this concept of American exceptionalism. I think that's kind of a myth that we kind of made up as a country. You know, it's kind of like I'm a Bulls fan, and people used to say Dean was a LeBron stopper, and I'm like, okay, all you have to do is watch the game to see that's not true at all, but they still call him a LeBron stopper. Like, okay, he scored more than us than anybody else. You know, and for black people, the American exceptionalism, you know, they kind of sold us this dream that, okay, if you do the right things and work hard, you're going to make it, but that's not necessarily true. There's no recipe for, quote unquote, getting your part of the American pie. I mean, when I first started out in academic, you know, when I first started out in school, I went to college for the simple fact my parents were broke. And I didn't want to be broke too. So when I got a scholarship, you know, hey, I went to school, I graduated. I thought I was going to be I thought I was going to be a VP by the time I was 45. Life kind of came up. Yeah, I was doing great in my job, but I met a woman. We had a family. I no longer had any interest in working 20-hour days and 16-hour days. And I wanted to come home and spend time with my family. See, I kind of switched the script and realized, I want to do great at my job, but this job is really just to fund my lifestyle because my value is my family. That's not always American exception. That's not always American dream, because American dream, we're supposed to make all and get all. I'm trying to teach my kids now that, you know what, I want you to go to school, but I want to be the last person in this family to work for somebody. I want to teach you in school so you can take advantage of opportunities, because you need to be able to work for yourself and be able to understand what you want to do and not be tied in by, having a job that makes money, because that's how they bring you in. Me, I can't quit my job. I got bills. I got responsibilities. And a lot of things that I would like to do, I can't do anymore. I think I would be effective as a teacher. I would like to be more than in the streets. But guess what? We still got a mortgage got to pay. I got to get my kids to school. So I guess for black people, my thing is, let's kind of not worry about what the American dream is and the American exception is. And let's define that for ourselves. I'd rather live in a community where I can go and not have to worry about being treated differently because I'm black. I like to be able to drive my nice car when I see the cops, and I look over my shoulder when the lights come on, thinking that, gee, if they stop me, is this a stop that's going to be our last one? That, to me, is more of an American dream, to be treated equally. And the stuff that they're selling, I just don't believe in.
Yeah.
As far as the dreamer construct, I think Mr. Coates was saying that somewhat what Terry was saying, that these people are walking around and they're not conscious. They have no idea what's going on. Everything they believe in is a myth, right? They're building their foundation and they're building it like Jenga. So when it meets reality, and a couple of examples I think I gave you guys was when Jack London basically sent out a call for a great white hope to beat Jack Johnson at the turn of the century, because the white fragility couldn't take a black man as a heavyweight champion of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Another example is Stay Mad Abby. You got a student that can't get into the university that she wants, and so it's because of reverse discrimination, because of black kids could get in. It's not because of her own ineptitude that she's just not a good enough student. She can't get in because a black kid took her spot. And that type of mindset is dangerous. That sense of entitlement, where you can't achieve what you want to achieve because somebody that's not even you consider worth as much as you, or as valued as you are, takes your spot. That's why, that's dangerous, and that's why Donald Trump's campaign is doing so well, is because of white resentment. Because I think what white people find out, if they compete with black people, or even when white men compete against white women on a level playing field, they don't have the success rate that they feel they should, because of the sense of entitlement. And so when he's talking about the dreamers, I think he's talking about, and I could be wrong here, I think he's discussing this trance that white people are in, that they're genetically superior, and that when they wake up from that, they're not able to deal with reality. And so you have stuff like, lawsuits of whether I got the grades or not, I still deserve a shot, at this prestigious university just because I am who I am.
10 years later.
So to me, those are my thoughts on it. And I kind of jumped around here. Did everybody get a chance to answer this question?
No, I didn't. This is Don. I didn't get a chance.
Oh, go ahead, Don.
You need actually for the Ray.
I'm sorry, I'm rushing ahead.
The middle might not work.
Right.
All right, my bad. Go ahead. All right, we'll go with Don, and then we'll go with Ray.
All right, I'll start off with this great quote. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Right, that's on the Statue of Liberty, and I mean it's hypocritical, and I think someone had touched on that earlier. Is that we're selling a dream to the world. Even the president, during his speech earlier this week about terrorism, I couldn't count how many times, lost count of how many times he said that America is the greatest country. America is the greatest country. I mean, we're selling the world a dream. We're selling our citizens a dream. And someone touched on it earlier, is that you can't buy into that dream. You have to actually create the dream that's going to be beneficial to you and your kids. I mean, those of us that had kids, we do know that everything and every move that we're making right now is for our children and our grandchildren because we want a better life for them than what we had, right? I look at it from the perspective, just an analogy as far as, why I'm so passionate about Negro Leagues baseball. Like these brothers pretty much said, well, fine, you're not going to let us play this game with you. Well, we're going to take your game, learn your game, master it, and beat you at it. And if we were to actually apply that to everyday life by from the perspective of being a black person, I really do believe that that dreamer's construct, we're constructing our own dream within each and every one of us and passing that down from generation to generation. But I really believe that we're selling pipe dreams to some extent.
Mr. Summerset?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with a lot of the sentiment here as far as the dreamers and all that. But I do believe personally, I believe it's a way of, like I think one of you guys was saying, I think it was Mr. Legend was saying that how, in order, it's a way of that superiority to keep that instilled, to keep that going, so that, I think there's so much fear that these so-called dreamers have of losing what they have, because it's based on a lot of I think a lot of myth, a lot of basically you just say we're exceptional and that's how we are. That's what we are. That's how you can go and justify being in the forefront on wars that probably should have nothing to do with you.
Right, the rules don't apply to them.
And you can say, hey, we should, for some, I ask the question all the time, why do we have to be leading these wars? Why, you know what I mean? If you can take support, why do we have to lead? Because you have to be important, and that's all you have to tell the world. We're important. Doesn't matter whether you are or not. It just matters that you're saying with a straight face, and you mean it. I asked somebody not too long ago. I was interested. I started thinking about what's poor, and I was asking somebody. They were like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, before settlers came to certain areas, like say North America or Africa, were those people poor? Probably not. They lived off the land. They probably were happy. This construct of money, of having things, was driven down their throat, and now they're somehow considered poor because these areas were raped. And it's all a mindset. It's all this mentality of perpetuating this superiority that somehow you just need to have. You can't just be happy within your own skin. You have to feel that you're better, that you're more important, that this is our way of life is better than everybody else's way of life.
I think, Mr. Legend, we missed one part of the script, and we missed one part of the script that I think we really should discuss.
Which part was that?
The Jeff Daniels, in the newsroom about him.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so,
yeah.
And what I was just gonna say is, when it comes to the American dream, that was beautiful because the thing is, it's in the first part, it's obvious because it's the girl, she's like, "Why is America great?" and everyone gives their 2-word answers, but then he gives his response. And his response is a dream in and of itself. He's like, America was this great place built by these great men. So there's no women involved. No women built America. Great. Wonderful. And then he talks about all the great things that we've done in our past and why we were the greatest country in the world. You talk about 1995. You talk about 1985, 75. Like, what is this time that you're talking of when America was this shining light for society? That was kind of a dream in of itself, too. So I thought that was funny.
No, so and to piggyback on that, you always hear usually conservatives, and I don't want to, if we have any conservative liberals, I don't want to offend anybody, but they always talk about traditions and this great time when America was great, and I don't know what the heck they're talking about because I can't remember. I can't remember when America was great. I mean, I can remember my mother on that struggle and that grind every day. And the garbage she had to swallow at home and come and deal with with 5 kids and then go back and do it again the next day. So I can't remember when America was great. Well, I know there's no point in time that I want to go back and revisit.
Mr. Legend. I can tell you. I remember you told me you were in a discussion with somebody, and they said something about, I wish we could go back to 100 years ago when America was great. And I remember this to this day. You said it wasn't for everybody.
Yeah,
You just cracked me
yes.
up when you said that. It was there was a lot of people that this country wasn't great for back then. You know?
Yeah, so as a side, so what me and Ray was talking about, I had a discussion with one of my coworkers, and he was like, the Obamacare app is legislation going to make America a terrible country and this and that, and back in the day America was great. And I was like, back when? What day are you? When was America great? He was like, like 100 years ago. I was like, you're even talking before suffrage. You're basically talking about like white male landowners is who when you're referring to. Well, America was great for them. I was like, it wasn't great for everybody 100 years ago.
Right.
Was he around
like,
100 years ago?
Yeah, and he was
Right.
like, and then I was making everything racial, and so we stopped the conversation. And I was like, that's right, buddy, keep it moving. Don't bring that mess over here no more. So, but I think Jeff Daniels, nailed it, but he kind of exposed himself too. America isn't great, and then everything he does when it was great because white men were doing things. It was like the good old boys club. If we could get back to that, and I think everybody on this panel could probably say we don't want to go back to that. We want to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks for bringing that up again, Mr. Knox. Man, we trying to burn through these. There's just so much good discussion, though. So we up on question 5. How do you all go about living in your black body here in America? And I'm gonna start this one off with Mr. Lee, Terry Lee.
All right. I love that. I love that metaphor he used in the book, the body. Because when he brought that up, I was like, I never thought about it that way. But I think it's for me. I try not to pay attention to it, but it's always visible. There's always a reminder that at least for me, and where I live and where I work at, I think it's visible because maybe it's visible to me because I'm the only one a lot of the time, unless I'm hanging out with my friends and I don't pay attention to it, or it's so I go about it being conscious of I'm a black man. I'm proud of being a black man. I'm gonna let you know that I'm a black man. I'm gonna let you know about my experiences. I'm not gonna let you forget it. I'm not gonna throw it in your face, but I'm not gonna let you discount it either. So it sometimes it's energizing. Sometimes it's tiresome. So it's almost like a tennis match on a regular basis. How is this gonna be today? And on the days it's rough, I hate it. On the days it's great, I love it. So that's how I go about it. I take what each day gives me.
Mr. Baker.
Could you just rephrase that question for me one more time before I answer?
So the question was, how do you go about living in your black body here in America?
I just had to have you rephrase that because I just had to laugh, chuckle at that one because I think my black body makes a lot of people uncomfortable here in America. It's amazing, in my mind, I'm this one really agreeable person. I'm usually not looking for trouble. I'd rather get along than go along, but I also realize that, in a lot of areas that I'm in, that I might be one of the only black people that some people encounter on a personal basis or on a relationship basis. So I got to make sure that I stand for ours. So, if I'm in a crowd and I hear something that I don't like, I need to make sure that they understand that there's another viewpoint. So I think I do make a lot of people uncomfortable with that. When you spoke up your conversation with your conservative friends, I always laugh because my conservative friends say the same thing. They want to go back to America when it was great. And I was like, okay, you want to go back to the time where black people had no rights and you can impose your will on us with impunity. Sorry, but those days weren't cool. We don't want them back.
Right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Right.
We're not going to get those back. So, I guess the biggest thing is with my black body, I'm no longer the militant I used to be because I'm way more comfortable with myself. And I'm way more comfortable with myself, but I also realize I'm an advocate for a lot of people without a voice. So I guess the biggest thing is I try to conduct myself in a form of truth, whereas I'm not self-conscious about the things I say, but then again, I also want to make sure that if I'm engaging in conversations, I'm not that it's actually a dialogue, not that I'm just reading you because you said something stupid, where maybe that we can have a conversation and maybe you can understand my viewpoint and you can understand mine. But if you don't, it's okay, because at the end of the day, I'm okay being the black me.
No. I will say this. It's tiring. So Chris Rock did a segment. I forget which of his shows was. He was like, when you first meet somebody, you're not meeting them, you're meeting their representative.
Yeah.
It's like that when you're only a black person in the office, right? I mean, because everything is magnified.
Always.
You know, so if you're the only black face in a white space, you know, there's a lot of pressure to do the right thing all the time, right? And so it's a tiring exercise. So in me and Ray are in the IT environment. We started off as programmers. And so a lot of times there will be in like meetings or whatever, and you got to spoke to be heard because you don't look like the typical programmer. And you got to make sure you know what you're talking. So somebody say something and be like, okay, we'll go with that. And then somebody like me or Ray or say something, and they'll be like, have a follow-up question.
That happens.
100.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, dude, I'm not the best programmer in the world, but when I was doing it, I was kind of nice with it. So trust me on this. You know, so it's a lot of pressure depending on where you are, managing, you know, your black body, and if it's in a white space. And I think what Ray or somebody else was saying, they didn't have a Celebrate Black Day when they went to Howard because it was every day. I'm, you know, in my office, I'm at the inverse of that. I'm very conservative. I'm very quiet. Because I just what Mr. Knox was saying about the young lady that's playing soccer for Howard. You know, there's not a lot of people that have those, you know, historical experiences. It's a cultural set that you could identify with. So I don't. Mr. Curry.
Yes. I mean, I use the analogy of it kind of being like the invisible man, right? I mean, I sense that just some days walking downtown, you know, in the masses of people. It's just like, you know, you see someone walking towards you, and it's like, okay, are you going to bump into me? Am I invisible? And kind of twofold, because when I was in corporate, I got my Series 7, so I was a licensed stockbroker. So I was with this firm called Nuveen Investments, and I was a wholesaler. So my sales territory was Southern Virginia and North Carolina, and this was, you know, when I was about 33. So, you know, I'm on the road traveling in, you know, the sticks of North Carolina and Southern Virginia, and I would go into these offices to where it was not a black person in there. And here I am coming in there to drop off literature or speak to a financial advisor about why their client should invest $500,000 or $100,000 in a mutual fund. So you can imagine, you know, some of the looks that I would get, some of the questions that I would get in reference to me, you know, representing my the company and my knowledge base of the particular products. But what I found was that the guys that I did well with and that I did business with respected the fact that, you know, that I was me, that I was unabashedly black to some extent, that, you know, I would share stories about, you know, my culture with them in order to build a relationship, and it was as if they genuinely wanted to know and felt comfortable asking me questions that they normally would, you know, couldn't pose to any black person and whatnot. So it's to some extent, I found that it pays and it benefits you as a black person to want to educate others to our plight.
So you kind of leverage your blackness.
Yeah, no question about that. Because I mean, they're curious. They want to know, like, and it educates them as to why we carry ourselves and think the way that we do. You know, it's pure ignorance. Like I lived on the South Side, and you know, a lot of the white cats that I worked with back then, you know, this was in the 90s. They said that they were told don't go past Roosevelt Road in Chicago. Like Roosevelt Road was a Mason-Dixon line. Like literally, do not go past Roosevelt Road. So I would joke and I'd say, so what do you think when I walk out of my front door that I'm low crawling and stepping over dead bodies, you know, on my way to work? And they would sit there and pretty much laugh at themselves, just because again, the picture that was painted of the South Side of Chicago,
Hey, guys, we got a question from Twitter. Felicity Broke wants to know if we could bring up the section of the book where the white lady pushed Coates' son and his reaction.
Okay, that is probably, man, I'll come up with a different response than for the last question, but that was the part of the book that was the most impactful to me.
I agree.
In that moment, he felt everything right there. He felt a white person taking taking liberties on his son because that 4-year-old boy didn't matter, and he felt that in her, that boy didn't matter, but he just had a response to it. He was like, any parent, you put your hands on my kid, and then the whole crowd comes at him like he did something wrong.
Yeah.
And while in the midst of standing up for himself, he realizes that he's putting his son in danger by standing up for his son.
Wow.
And that is a moment I don't know what I would do there.
Crazy.
I would be possibly angrier than he was. I don't know if I am, like Mr. Baker said, you won't find a person more mild-mannered, more easygoing than me. I've been in a fight since I was like 13 years old. But
you're doing something right.
I try. But, man, I can't. Somebody pushed my child on an escalator. Like, I could see it. I was like, I felt like I was on U Street in D.C., and it happened to me. And for defending your child to be wrong, like, because you're black and you look like an ogre because you care about someone putting their hands on your child, that was the only moment I felt in the book that was totally defeatist. Like, I felt defeated for him because he felt he was wrong for doing what he was supposed to do.
As a parent, he felt helpless, and I could identify with that. And the woman had to, not only temerity to do it, she basically devalued his son, considered him as other, and she probably didn't even think about brushing him off because, Mr. Curry brought it up as, the invisible man. She didn't see him as a human, and I think that what fueled the rage of Mr. Coates. Ray, I don't know if you had a chance to answer the last two. Mr. Summerset.
What was that? Oh, you said me. Well, I'll talk towards the the last question. And I guess speaking as someone who doesn't have kids, it was powerful that he felt that he was doing something wrong or endangering his son by taking up for him. And I actually have to echo the sentiments that would just burn a fire in me. I don't know how I would contain myself in that because of the fact that, wait a minute, I've done absolutely nothing wrong here. I'm standing up for my child, which I am supposed to be doing. And for some reason, because of my blackness and my color of my skin, I have put my child in harm's way. I think it sums up a lot, and the helplessness that he must have felt is just crazy to me because I don't know what I would do. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I thought he was in the right to say something to this woman. She felt, and I think it does go to show, kind of the mindset. She felt that, that she was in the right for doing what she did, and it's just incredible, actually.
Yeah, that was the most visceral part of the book. Mr. Baker, as a father, what were your thoughts on that?
Well, if that was me, I'd be in jail. That's all I know. I would be in jail. I'm gonna tell you now, nothing comes before my family. After God is my family, and God blessed me with them. So if you put your hands on them or treat them any way untoward, you might get away with smacking me across my face. I might turn the other cheek, but I promise you, if you touch something, if you take liberties with my family, I feel sorry for you because I can't control myself. I mean, that's just absolutely ridiculous. And it's sad that as black people that we're forced to feel that way and we have to justify our own rage or control our own emotions when we're actually being taken advantage of or we're being brutalized or harassed. I mean, it's crazy. I understand it 100% because, I mean, living out here in the suburbs, I'll never forget one time when we first moved out here, you know, we had our oldest 13 now, but she was a little girl. We were in the grocery store, and you know how little kids, they, you know, they don't like to listen. She calls herself throwing a tantrum. Now, of course, we're the only black people in the store. And me and my wife looking at each other, and everybody around us is just looking. But, and you know, I'm getting mad because the scrutiny, everybody's looking at us. But my wife, who's pretty astute, she actually just sat down and had a conversation with my daughter, like, okay, I'm sorry you're feeling upset, but we're just not going to do this. So you're just going to have. She talked to her calmly and diffused it, but I just couldn't believe the way that everybody was looking at us, expecting us to just holler, scream. I mean, the looks on their face made me mad enough to want to fight, and they didn't, and they weren't saying anything to me. So for someone to put their hands on my child, I don't think I could deal with that.
Yeah,
I don't think I could deal with that.
Yeah, I thought Mr. Coates was handcuffed in that situation. There was nothing he could do that would not have exacerbated the situation.
No, he couldn't.
No.
Yeah, Mr. Lee, you got a son. What were your thoughts on that?
No, well, I actually, this funny example, as Mr. Legend knows my wife, and I'm pretty mild mannered, but you know, if you mess with my kids, I'm gonna turn it on. But my wife is on 100 when you mess with the kids.
Yeah,
So,
she is.
example, probably 5 years ago, a little boy in the neighborhood called my daughter a nigger, and this is in the morning. This is in the morning. We both had our pajamas on. She was outside riding her bike. All I had on was some boxers. All she had on was like her nightgown. So she came in the house and said that. I ran upstairs to put some pants on. My wife was gone out the door. About the time I got some pants on, she was already at the kid's house.
She wasn't playing.
And talking to the mother. And my wife can cuss you out without cussing you out. So she was doing that to the kid and the mom. So by the time I got there, the kid was denying it. The mother was like, "Oh, he didn't say that." And about an hour later, the kid comes to our house, apologizing. So, and my wife had no shame in it. She goes, and those things have happened before. But I'm gonna take the assumption in the book this was the first time this happened to Mr. Coates, and I will guarantee you if it happens again, he would do the same thing. Because when you have a child, you can't think about what's going to happen around you. You can think about it afterwards, like he did. But if something happens to your child, that's your gift, that's your blessing. You got to protect it, and whatever happens to you happens to you. But you got to protect your child in all situations.
Yeah, I feel the same way. My only, and the only thing I would say was that you know my situation out here in these suburbs is tenuous. You know, I got a mortgage and this and that, and if I react to that like any father would, the kiss the suburbs goodbye. I mean, because I'm not coming back to the same level of job I had before I left once they let me out. To be honest with you, because it was hard for me to get a security clearance, last time. I'm definitely not gonna get one now. So I mean, and I felt Mr. Coach's rage and frustration because he was effectively handcuffed by that situation.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so, who didn't get a chance to answer on this one?
I didn't. This is Don.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. I would have, pun intended, I would have blacked out. And, yeah. I mean, just looking at it from the perspective that, again, as I said, I got a 16-year-old son and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old daughters. And, they're my world. And, yeah, I would have blacked out. And, it goes back to that question earlier about us being in our black body, which is that, we have to basically move gingerly even when we're right.
Yep.
And that's just, it's just amazing to me. And
it's exhausting.
Yeah. It goes back again to that analogy I gave earlier about, I mean, this is like full-fledged mental contact sport that we're in. You know what I mean? Like from the standpoint of that, I mean, it's a battle. I mean, we all know our history. We all know, what we're descendants of. And we're still suffering from the psychological effects of slavery. It ain't no other way to put it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you guys got to think about it. It's only been about 50 some odd years since we've even been allowed to vote, Amazing. So if you quantify time from that perspective, my brothers, that lets you know that, we've come leaps and bounds from a socioeconomic standpoint individually, but yet just as a race, bro, we're still, you know, we're still behind. You know, it's only
Preach.
been
And they're rolling
yeah.
back our rights to vote
Preach.
That's what I'm
in
trying to
some
tell you. That's
states.
what I'm trying to
Yeah.
tell you. But that's
Yeah.
why, again, when I mentioned earlier that, you know, it's going to take us to really start pulling our resources to get a political action committee together for us to basically tie the turn, man. Because I mean, it's coming. It's coming. I mean, if you got Scalia on the Supreme Court making comments like that, bruh, come on. You know, that
Yeah.
alone was a wake up call. I'm telling you.
And here's what a lot of people don't know. Scalia was denied entry in Princeton,
Yep.
and he said it's
Sure
because
was.
he said because he was Italian.
Yeah. Yep. Sure was.
I didn't know that.
Wow. Wow. I saw
Yeah,
it was the
yeah.
editorial comment, cartoon rather, in reference to that Stay Mad Abby chick, and they had basically four white people and one black person, right? And she pretty much was saying, pointing at the black person, saying it was the black person's fault that they took her slot. So what the cartoonist was saying is that, you know, it's not enough just to get some; they want it all.
Yep.
Straight up, they want it all. You know.
No, that's on point. Gents, we got time for one more question here. I mean, the discussion has been great. And, you know, I wouldn't mind doing this quarterly, whether it's with books or sports. And so I'll probably try to hit you guys all offline. You know, this is not something I could, monthly because of scheduling or whatnot. But this was a good time, good discussion. And since we have a legit ESP journalist on, I wouldn't mind getting into, and a diehard Chicago sports fan. You know, and we even got a Cowboys fan on
Cowboys.
So we're gonna have to do this again. We're gonna have to come up with another hashtag because this one's just for the book club. But we'll talk about that offline. So this is the last question. We're gonna go in alphabetical order for the last one. And then when we close out, everybody tell your bios, tweet out your links where they can find you at. And that's going to be the inner discussion for the day. And the last one I'm going to go with is thoughts on the quote, "Black life is cheap, but in America, black bodies are a national resource of incomparable value." And we're going to start with Charles. We're going to go in alphabetical order on that. And then this will be our last one for the day. Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you basically hit it on the head. It's amazing how black people, I mean, we're so enamored by everyone. I mean, we set the trends. I mean, in sports, in sports we dominate. And it seems that any field that we really kind of get into, we become trendsetters. But the actual black man or the black woman are ostracized. I mean, I always laugh with my wife because we always talk about the Kardashians and Jennifer Lopez, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, I can't celebrate people who are celebrating things that brother been celebrating for ages. I mean, what brother ain't been celebrating big booties?
The chat just became PG-13.
Right.
I'm sorry, but it's just hilarious how our ideas of beauty have been morphed, and they're not even our own ideas of beauty anymore. You know, back in the day, I remember because I went to school, of course, with most white people. They used to dog sisters up for having big booties.
Yep.
Just to dog them out. Ooh, look at that big butt. We can't put on the cheerleading team. Now they got butt pads. They're getting butt surgery. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Seriously?
I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, anything we do, I mean, you know, our clothes, the way we dress, the way we speak. We set so many trends, but if you're a brother, you walk in a room full of white people, they're going to look at you funny and make you feel like you shouldn't be there. That's the issues that we're dealing with. It just makes no sense. It's such a contradictory world we live in. It's like everybody wants to be around you for the trends, but nobody wants to be around you as a person. And it's difficult to navigate, and I haven't figured out exactly how to 100% honestly. So I'm still working through that myself.
I'm Mr. Curry.
Yeah. Well, from the perspective of again, how America's a business corporation. Their business model initially was founded on free labor, right? So I take that in reference to us being a national resource of incomparable value, because without slavery, do you really think this country would be what it is today? You know, there's no way we would be where we are today. So, you look at it from the perspective that, again, black lives, for us to even that mantra, that slogan to even be in existence in this day and age, that Black Lives Matter. I mean, you quantify the fact that I read something earlier this year that they said that there are more brothers in prison than there were slaves back in the day, which is absolutely crazy to me. Yeah. You guys can look that one up. But there's more brothers in prison right now than there were slaves back in the day, man. So, you look at it again from the perspective, and we touched on this earlier before we actually got on the call. It's like we're regressing. I mean, you look at it; they show us pictures of us in Africa with loincloths on and no shirts, right? And you look at these young brothers that you see today walking down the street with no shirts on. You know, it's as if we're basically moving backwards, but not in the right way at all. And it's sad, and it's kind of like, at this point, you know, what do we do? What way can we actually turn the tide, man, to add value back to our lives, and to really help these brothers that feel hopeless understand that there is a way out. Because that's really the key to these future generations. Our next president, Bernie Sanders, actually, I caught him on. You know I had to do that, Thelonious. You know that, brother.
I know.
You know that.
I'm a Bernie fan too.
Right. So I caught him on Charlie Rose, right?
Right.
And he basically says that 40% of African American children are living in poverty right now, you guys, and that's a whole generation, brother. And you're not hearing anything in the media about that at all. 40% are living in poverty right now. And I'll leave it at that. Again, I believe that he's actually a person, and not even just from the standpoint of really affecting black lives, but just affecting the fact that that this country, that the whole value system in this country is screwed up. It's all about corporations and big dollars versus taking care of the people that have basically added value to this nation.
I agree. Mr. Knox.
Okay. I would say that's probably the best thing about Coates' work is the way the plunder of the black body and America. You can't separate that. What did he say in the beginning of the book? He's like, we look at this stuff like it was a tornado, like it was a hurricane of some, just a terrible thing that happened one day. And, it's just something that happened. No, it's society. It's the way it's been constructed. It's the system. What's he say in the other part? Where I think it was the plunder of the black body in America. It's a tradition. It's an American tradition. And that's kind of what he's trying to illustrate in the book, like everything. Him growing up in West Baltimore, having to navigate his streets every day, knowing where to go and where not to go, as opposed to thinking about what he needs to be doing in school. That was a construct. Them saying, get in line, speak when you're spoken to. School is a form of compliance as opposed to encouraging curiosity. That's by design. And so, I don't know, just the plunder of the black body is kind of essential to the way everything is in the country now. And to say that there really needs to be a change to really come, you can't say that police need to be retrained. You can't say that we need to be better about hiring practices. What we need to do is eliminate this entire idea that we have. And I'm sorry, there's something going on in my headphones right now, and it is driving me nuts. But this we have to come to the conclusion that it's wrong, that everything that's happened is wrong, and that the condition that black people are in as a whole and the way that they're viewed is wrong. But in order to acknowledge that, people have to acknowledge that the entire way that they've been brought up and the entire way that they think is not bad or monsterly racist is wrong. And that's where the conundrum lies.
Mr. Lee.
All right. Well, I'm gonna refer to Public Enemy, and just leave this as just more of a message and a statement. Don't believe the hype. And the hype, that incomparable value. We as black men and women in this country, we have a high value, but we've been fed lies that we are low value. And I think what's happening, back in the days of the civil rights era and segregation, those messages came from white people. Now the messages come from black people in our music and our media and those kind of things. So the hype is coming from us, and where we're being fed things that look like they're valuable, but they have no value. You know, the way we treat women, the way we talk about what's successful in the hood, that stuff has no value. Our value comes from our knowledge, or it comes from our struggle, and it comes from the way that we try to uplift ourselves. And I think we have to remember that. So when you talk about that incomparable value, we have to take that and turn it on its head and use that versus what we're being fed through music and TV and all that kind of stuff.
Hey Terry, let me
Agree
do
100%.
let me do a Talib quote on you since we quoting Public Enemy. That what you just said about we value the raw things. Talib has a quote, Talib Kweli, the great rapper, where these cats toast death and pain and drink champagne like slaves on a ship, talking about who got the flyest chain. And I think that encapsulates what you just said about valuing the wrong things and listening to the wrong leaders, listening to these false idols.
Right.
I just wanted to say that before we transition to Mr. Summerset.
Okay, yeah, I'd have to say I agree with a lot of what was said again here. I think that the construct has been that we have been a valuable commodity to this. I agree with totally. This nation was built on our bodies, but it was built. I mean, I don't think anybody would agree. If you run any company, would you not be a multi-billion-dollar company if you didn't have to pay your workers? I mean, you could make so much money. Who wouldn't love that?
Exactly.
Didn't have to give them anything, actually. You know what I mean? So I think that I think that definitely this whole construct, and I think that we've been left. And I also agree with the notion that a lot of it is coming with us, but it's coming from a perspective of we weren't ever taught to value ourselves. And I think education, I think doing things like this, I think actually exposure and education is something that we definitely need to break those chains of of the exploitation of us and our value. I've been reading the prison system as a construct is another thing just to a different form of slavery and generating money at the same time.
Well, they got a for-profit prison system now, where they
It's crazy.
dude, it's crazy.
Isn't it crazy?
No, it literally is crazy.
And,
Clinton set that up. He privatized the prison, so they get paid based on the bodies that they have in the beds, man. Free labor.
And so you got
90%
prison companies that are lobbying for 3 strikes and you're out, for longer prison sentence, because it directly affects their bottom line.
Exactly. I mean, that's why when certain drug dealers were getting put away for all of this time for a certain amount of drugs that they would have if it was in a certain form. If it was crack, you get this. If it's regular cocaine, which white people had, you get a different. It's right there in front of your face. If you choose to look away, that's on you, in my opinion.
It's hitting you in the face.
It's smack you right there in your face, and I think we
Cats
just
looking around like, who just hit me?
I think part of me wants. You just have to be aware. You have to be cognizant. I remember a movie. One of Denzel Washington's underrated movies, Devil in the Blue Dress. Love that movie.
Oh, my favorite movie. Thank you.
He says something to the effect that I got these folks peeing on my head right now and telling me it's rain. And I was like, that's exactly what's going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
Front of your face and open your eyes. That's. Because we are a valuable commodity. We are. Start doing your research. Start looking back. I'm learning things now. I didn't know when I was young.
Yeah.
I didn't realize coming out of high school. And like I told you, I thought I was smart. I didn't realize Egypt was really in Africa. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
The shame. All I saw was white people in Egypt. You know, from TV. That's all I knew. You know what I mean?
What was her name? Liz Taylor.
Liz Taylor.
Yeah.
You a Brenner?
Egypt was an
You
island.
was a pharaoh? Yeah, the bald-headed white man was a pharaoh. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Yul Brynner.
Yul Brynner, yeah.
So I'm gonna say this about that quote, and that's a great quote. And I saw a couple people just join, so let me go ahead and say it again. The question we're asking is, there's a quote in the book, Between the World and Me. Black life is cheap, but in America, bodies are a natural resource of incomparable value. And when I think of this, I think of the NCAA. I mean, that's a $1 billion industry.
Exactly.
That's a $1 billion industry, and your country and your coach can buy you lunch.
Right. Wow.
I mean, it's a $1 billion industry, and they chew cats up and spit them out.
Left and right.
You know,
Sure,
and me and Terry went to a football high school where I mean, that's all they. I mean, it's you play football and you go to school, and if you're lucky enough, you go to Nebraska. And there's a lot of cats that play football at Nebraska that went on and played, football at the pro level. I go back at home, they shoving snow, cutting grass.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Right now, ESPN just got another contract with $1 billion contract with a conference.
Wow.
Yeah. The college football playoff brings in more money for ESPN. It costs more than what it costs Time Warner to show the Lakers.
What?
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's a form of modern day slavery for sure.
Big time.
You know, truly. And the tide that's turning on that is what those brothers did at the University of Missouri. That shifted. That really shifted the whole mentality of a lot of these players now. To where now, remember, was it last year when they were talking about stuff?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, somebody, my phone rang and I got cut out. My bad.
The brothers, the athletes actually getting paid. I think the lawsuit stemmed out of Northwestern University, right? If I'm not
They were
mistaken.
trying to do a union, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that you're going to see a lot of momentum, even though you haven't heard anything about it lately, though. You know.
No.
And another thing that comes to mind is the business model that the municipalities use, like in Ferguson, where their whole profit is directly dictated by how many tickets they could write for, poor black people.
Yeah.
So you look at the percentages of revenues that was coming from municipalities, and
It was something like 40% or something like that of their revenue was coming from ticket butts and stuff.
right. It's crazy. And so that when I think of that quote, that's what I think of. I think of the NCAA, and I think of white judges, white prosecutors, white policemen getting salaries made from ticketing exponentially, poor black folk and poor white folk too. But
Dead on.
There's that. And gents, it's almost been 2 hours, man. This has been a great time. We're gonna have to do this again. We're gonna go ahead and close out. We're gonna start in alphabetical order. Tell them a little bit of bio, if you blog, if you tweet, where you at, what you do, a little bit of your resume, and we'll catch you audience on the flip side. We'll start with Mr. Baker.
Okay, again, I'm Charles Baker. You can find me on Twitter at bchuckbaker. I'm always talking sports, politics, and just general facts. So feel free to tag me in, and let's get to know each other a little better.
Mr. Curry.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter at Negro League Cafe, and you can also catch me at Southern Pitch FT. Both of those are ventures that I am currently pursuing, revolving around soul food and Negro League baseball history. Our mantra is enjoy the food, digest the history. So hopefully in the next 10 years, we'll have a location in a city near you. And this is a great call. Hopefully we can do this again.
That's dope. All right. Mr. Knox.
All right. Catch me at Stephen R. Knox on Twitter. I could be live tweeting the Warriors game. I could be quoting someone that fell down the stairs in a New York Daily News article. A little bit of everything. I write for ESPNW and Bleacher Report most recently. So yeah, just keep your eyes on my Twitter, and might read something nice.
Mr. Lee?
All right, you can catch me at Coach T Lee on Twitter, and then also catch me on LinkedIn. I write blogs for merchanetics.com. It's a psychometric tool where we talk about leadership development. So I do write blog entries for that.
Mr. Summerset?
I don't get on Twitter as much as I should. I guess
You still
now,
got the
I guess I
egg,
will.
dog. You still got the egg.
Hey, look, I'm missing out. So, I do have a Twitter, Summerset, SUMMERSET. I'm on Facebook at Renaldo Summerset, and on LinkedIn at Renaldo Summerset. I'm working on. Mr. Legend knows. I'm actually getting. I got to talk to you about this also, Mr. Legend. I'm also getting heavy into doing some consulting work, but basically staffing IT professionals. So
We definitely got to hook up with that. Yeah.
I'm getting heavy into it, so I really need to talk to you, and that's why I need to get on Twitter a lot more also. So.
Hey, I want to thank our esteemed panel. I think we had a great discussion. It was diversity of opinion. You wouldn't know by looking at everybody's profile pic, but we brought it from a lot of different angles. Thank each and every one of you gentlemen. I appreciate it. I would like to do this again. So hit me up offline. Let's schedule another one in a couple months. It could be sports, politics, or whatever. I just enjoy this.
Thank you.
This
Bernie,
is your boy. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders, America, Bernie.
No Donald Trump, huh?
All right, Blur Book Club. The book for next month's read is close friends of mine, John Winston. It's a YA novel. IA Initiate. A young man finds himself with all type of skills and abilities. What's he going to do with those, and how did he get them? So that's chat scheduled for the 17th of January. Hope everybody can join us again. Hey, thanks again, gentlemen, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, Fred.
Great job.
Good job, guys.
Great talk.
Later.